Good day, everyone. Hi. So today we'll be talking about a very wonderful topic in HTML, which is the HTML images, the HTML tables, the HTML list, and the HTML block and inline block elements. So firstly, let's dive into the HTML image. So in order to import an image, the first thing you need to know is how to actually import files. So if you click on these three dots here in this file, you will see an option where they say import files. So from here you can easily import any files of your choice to your code. So now let's actually import this file. So if you do that correctly, you see that you have the file here. So now in programming language, you actually have to store this file in an easier name so you can recall. So what you do is you click on this three dot again, then you click on rename. Then when you rename this, you actually clean up this and put a short and easy name you can remember. It doesn't have to be img, right? It was jpg, so you just put a short name that you can remember. Then when you are done with that, you come over to your code. This was what you have achieved so far, and at the end of HTML video we are going to be doing a little, like a little project using HTML and a little of CSS. But that being said, let's import our image. So importing our image, we just have to use the img tag. Now the src is asking us for the location or the name of our image. So img.jpg is the name of our image, and alternative text is asking us, okay, let's put a description of what our image is all about, a website, right? So if you want it, you see that we have our image here, but it's too big. So what we can do is that we can add a width attribute to be 200 and the height, and the height to be 400, right? So you can see that is looking amazing now. So having done that, let's dive into the HTML tables. So tables are created using rows and columns, like rows and columns, right? So in order to create a table, you have to first create the table, the table tag. You draw down, then you have to create the what we call the th, like the th tag. Before the th tag, you create a tr, right? Now inside the TRL you have a TH. Now what does TH signify? Now this TRL actually signifies rows, right? The TRL you are seeing here actually signifies the first row, right? Now what is the TH? The TH here, you are putting in the first heading. If you put another 2H inside this first TRO, you know that it's still in the first row, or let's say in the first column, right? You put in this, so you are putting the heading. Then if I create another TR tag, TR, right, and put TD, right? TD is not like a bold heading, so TD is going to be basically under here for the first one. Then if you put another, you put 3, right? For the table to be complete, you put 3, just that way, going down like that. So now let's try it. So th will input our name, so capital letters is, then th will input our phone number, and th will input, we'll put our YouTube, so in capital letter, YouTube name, and th we input 8. Now probably age of being a website designer, a content creator and stuff. So now I've explained it to you earlier. I'll create another TR, but this time I'll not be using TH, because TH is actually for the heading in the beginning of the table. Now you can see them down over here. You can see how this looks, right? Can see how this looks. So now I've created another TR. So this TR is supposed to come to the second column, and if I create a TD, the TD is to be for the first row, which is the name. So what I'm going to pass in here is nothing else than my name, right? Why the second TD I'm going to be creating is for the second row, which is phone number. So what I'm going to be passing in here is nothing else than my phone number, right? So I have two cell phone numbers. So I'll be using one first. Right. So the second thing I'm going to be passing in here is my YouTube name for the third row. So my YouTube name is at web_servant001, and lastly I'll pass in the age for the fourth row of my YouTube page. So 2 years. So now we have something like this, right? Come on, let's look at that again. So the table is wider than our space, our line space and all. So let's change the border to 1. No, the border is 0, and you know what border means? Like a line around the. Now you can see how that looks, right? So if we copy this, so it seems like the code is telling us a little bit that we should remove the fourth, the third, the fourth, there's the 8. So because our phone screen is a little bit smaller though, so that has been kicked out, right? So this we copy, we paste, okay, we paste. So you now have something like this. Now you can see. So from here I can now start changing the phone number, changing the names, but I won't be doing that. So I'll just be changing the phone number to my other line. This is okay, right? So this is okay. So now what I want to show you is that here we are using something called an attribute to include our border, but we can do something else instead of that. Now we have connected our CSS. In our previous video we talked about the CSS style.css and all. So what I'm going to do now is since it's already connected, I'm going to use this external CSS to code. And now note, I'll be mentioning all the video I've done in this particular video, this video from the first class, and also if you haven't gone to that class, please try as much as possible to go to them to have a clear understanding of what I'm doing here, okay, so you don't get lost. So now what I'm going to be using the tag name selector. So we have the table, right, comma we have the table, comma, the TD, comma, the TD, right? So something like this. And now, if we run it, remember that we have cleaned up the border so that we have no border here. Now we can include a border using CSS, right? The border we included before was a border from HTML, 2 pixels, solid. This is the border style. Then you can put the border width, which can be the border color, which can be red, black, yellow. Just input yellow. Okay. So now you see how this looks. So there are other things you can do. We can do something we call border collapse, because you see that there are like triple border lines. So you can say border collapse. Collapse, right? So when you do this, you see that the line has collapsed, right? You can now see only one line. So you can also add padding to create a space inside the elements. So I'm using 2 pixels for now. Now you see there is a little space inside. So you can also do something to align the text align center, right? Something like this, right? So in the place where we have a lot of space inside of that, we are going to be seeing what I really mean. So all this we have been learning a lot, and I'll be compiling this to teach you a lot more, right? So we still have to go into the HTML list, which I'll tell you there are 2 basic type of lists. We have the ordered list and the unordered list. Now the ordered list is created this way. We have the ordered list and the unordered list. So the ordered list is created with OL, right? And to signify the list, you use LI. Now the list can be list of fruit, mango, LI again. You can say apple, and LI again. You can say banana, right? So these are list of fruit. So if you wanted to see something like this, you see how this goes. Now in order to change the style of, maybe you don't want the computer to name them as 1, 2, 3, that kind of stuff. So you come here and input a type. Now the type, you actually input the type. Now it's 1, 2, 3, right? So if you want the one of 1, 2, 3, you input 1. So it's going to name it number. It's going to name it accordingly using the numbers. So if you want the alphabet, you input in A, capital letter A. You see that it's ABC now. If you want the small letter A, you input the small letter A. You have the small letter A. If you want the II format, you just input I, right? So you get the I. Right? So this is a wonderful way of also doing it. Sorry, you notice something. The list was created inside the tag, so let's quickly remove the list and locate it outside the table. So somewhere here. So now to create this, the ordered list. Now to create the unordered list, you use UL, and still in the UL you use LI. So let's say this is the name of a person. Good luck. Li. James. Right. Li. Let's see. John, or you can say Johnson or anyone. So if you run this, you see that this has a dot format of, so you can come over here and say the URL list, right? You can say the list style, then you can change it to circle. Now you see how this is, you see how it is now. You can change it to square. So you can see how that list is. So these are some of the things you can do with list. So quickly, let's go into the last for our today's lesson today, which is actually the HTML block and inline block element. So the HTML block and inline block element helps us to understand the way elements behave. The way elements behave, and it also helps us to know the right element to use when styling. In case of doing CSS kind of styling with CSS, you have to understand the way this element behave in order to know the right styling, especially trying to move the element, the right styling. Padding and margin is used as a CSS property to move elements around the code, but the ability for you to understand the block and inline block element helps you to know the if you should be using the padding or the margin to move this element around the website. So now I will just show you an example of what a block element is and an inline block element. When I'm talking about a HTML element, then I mean this full code over here. The open tag, the content, and the closing tag are called the element, right? The HTML element. So what about this element? What are block elements and what are inline block elements? Now, block elements are the greedy guys, right? The guys that take up the whole space, even haven't being that big. So you see a sleep person sit down on a very big chair that is to contain 5 more persons, and the person sit down on that chair and be like, no one else, only me, I'll have it all for myself. That is the block element. So a block element doesn't necessarily take up like the full space, but due to the greedy fact that is a block element, it actually takes up the whole space even when it's not up to that extent. While the inline block is like the opposite of it. The inline block takes up the space that he can subdue, the space that is okay for him, right? So let's say an example. Now, the example I'll be giving, I'll be using the H1. Heading. Now this is a block element. I'll prove it to you. Now come over here and use the tag name and put a background color. So I'll put the background color to be red. Now you see that these are block elements. From H1 to H6 are block elements. Why? You can see clearly that they are taking up this whole space. That is why this guy is only just this text. It should at least take only this place, but since it's a block element, it's taking up this whole space. I'm pushing the next guy to the down part, and the next guy is also a block element, So him also takes up this space and push the next party to the down part. So this is also a block level element and is pushing this guy to the next part. So you can see that both this is a block element, this is also a block element because it's pushing this thing right down, right? This is also a block, this is a block, this is also a block element. Now the only inline element you can see clearly from this video is the image, because you can see that the image definitely allowed the link to come close to it. That signifies that this is a block level element and this is an inline block. So you can see that the list is also a block and the table is also a block. Now there is something you need to know. After knowing that this element is a block and an inline block, you can change the view of the element to make it a block element. Now how can we do that? We can usually do that using CSS H2 H3 comma H4 H5 H6, right? So now we have given them all red colors. We now say display inline to inline block, right? So now you can see that these guys now actually allow their friends to come up. They now allow these guys to come up. This guy allowed this guy to come up until the space is not enough to contain the next guy. That is when the next guy is sent to the next line, right? So how does this help you understand how to move a text around yes, it actually does. When you see a block element, something like the image, when you want to move it around, you don't use a padding, you use a migrate, because it doesn't have another background. This takes up the background and everything, right? This takes up the background and everything. So when you are moving something like this, if you are using a margin, in this case, a margin is moving outside the box, outside the border, is moving outside the border. Everything outside the border is moving. But if you are using a padding, you are moving this text inside the border, right? Inside this text directly. So I'll be using an example. So in this case now, I have given this element a background, right? So if I'm adding a migrant, I am moving outside. If I'm adding a padding, I'm moving inside the border. So I want to add a padding first to it, and I'll say, let me not put much, let me say 5 pixels. Now you can see that there is a lot more space outside it, right? There's a lot more space. So if I make it 10 to be bigger, it will be bigger space. Now you can see that the bigger space it has, the more it cannot occupy or contain these guys, right? So if I use a margin, it's going to shift outside the box. But for that example, I'm going to be using the div that we use there. So in the div, I will use a margin 10 pixels. Now you see that it's going to make the box smaller and add the space around it. Now you can see that there is a space outside this border. So now to have a lot more space inside, we use padding. So this is how we move elements, 5 pixels. This is how we move elements around the code. So if I'm to use this to move this image, should use, or is necessary I use margin to move it around. So if I want to move the link, I need to use padding. In text generally, you can use padding if you haven't given them a background, because all text can have a background, right? Even this table here, I can give it a background. So you know when to use padding and know where to use margin. You know where to actually apply the styling. So we still have some little things to do, but HTML is a very easy programming language, so we are almost done with the outline. Maybe some few days we'll be done with it, then we'll walk into the project and I'll explain some deep things to you guys, then we'll go into CSS. So please try to support me, subscribe, like the video, encourage me on what I'm doing, so you keep on seeing the next video and all. Thank you, have a great day, bye.